Here we have the new 2017 Honda Ridgeline, and this is a reintroduction of Honda's interesting take on what a compact or maybe mid-sized truck could look like from a completely different perspective. Unlike a lot of competitors in the segment like the Tacoma or the Colorado from Chevy, this is a unibody truck. It has independent suspension at all four corners, and that tends to mean it could ride a bit nicer, be a bit quieter, have a little bit more refinement in the trucks that are constructed otherwise. But there's a lot of things that may be controversial in the truck segment besides its construction. It is front drive with available all-wheel drive. The engine is a 3.5-liter V6 with a 6-speed automatic. Now you may be wondering why doesn't it have the 9-speed automatic like its platform siblings like the Pilot or the MDX, and that's because this is targeting a different payload capacity and more tow capacity. Honda's saying payload should be around 1,600 pounds and towing capacity will be above 3,500 pounds. But there's a lot of clever tricks beyond that stuff going on. When you look at a truck from a completely new perspective, you get to try out new things. Bed, for example, does some clever things. The tailgate drops down like you would normally expect, like so, but you can also release it like that. Why would you want to do that? Well, so you get better access to this partition down here. You have, of course, your spare tire. This storage area down here has a flat bottom and also a drain right here. So, for example, you could fill it with ice and store food and drinks, which is pretty clever. There's also a power port right here with a 3-prong plug, so you can plug in like a blender or a skillet or something. There's a lot of stuff built in here for tailgating. This flap isn't closing because the lock is set to be like that for the auto show. But one other very interesting thing about this bed is that the whole bed kind of functions as a speaker. There's little exciters in the sides here that can vibrate the bed and give you music right back here without exposing any speakers and stuff. A lot of clever stuff on the outside, but let's take a look inside next. Inside the new Honda Ridgeline, you have an interior that looks fairly typical for what you might get in a Honda SUV or car even. The instrument cluster, you have a suite of analog gauges actually, with a digital readout in the center, large digital speedometer at the top, which is pretty clever. I like that a lot, versus an analog gauge. The infotainment system looks like this. It does support Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It's easy to confuse the two nowadays, and that's really nice if you want to, use your phone's OS versus cars. It saves you from having to learn something. One thing that kind of frustrates us in the office is the lack of dials and knobs on this system. These are all capacitive buttons that you sort of swipe your finger across to make the volume go up and down, and as you can see, it can be kind of, it can be kind of annoying to use, even more so when you're driving. But what's nice about here is you have lots of storage access, power outlets, and USB port. This one even calls out for your smart device there. Lots of space for cup holders and so on. Big storage capacity down in here. That can be sealed too, just like that. And a sunroof. Next we'll hop in the back seat. But before we do that, one clever trick in this back seat is that you can fold the seats up by grabbing this flap. It's hard to do with one hand, but lock it in place and now you have more storage capacity in the back. Pretty clever stuff. And then back here, let's take another look at that dash. And you see it has a design that's fairly typical for Honda, and it's one that's hard to be disappointed with. It looks pretty nice. Down here, rear vents for rear passengers, which is very helpful. More USB power ports at the bottom, which is really good for all the devices we all carry these days. Rear seat room is pretty good. My head is not touching the roof. My knees are just grazing the seat in front of me. It may be a little bit further back because we're at a show and somebody's moved it around. But we also have large cup holders and more storage pockets and cubbies in these doors, which is very helpful. To find out more about the Honda Ridgeline and its competitors like the Tacoma or the Chevy Colorado, be sure to visit Edmunds.com.